When you've had a baby, one of the big things that happens is lack of sleep. Now, people tell you about it, but you're never emotionally prepared for what it's going to do to you, to your mental health, to your relationship with your partner, and your relationship with your child. So sleep is a critical thing that's really wobbly at that time. And that's why I've asked our special guest, Joni Peddie, who is a sleep specialist, in fact, an insomnia therapist.
Cognitive behavior therapist for insomnia.
There you go. It's a mouthful.
I did a mouthful. CBT.
But that's really going to help us to get some strategies on just getting into that place where you can get a little less cray-cray and get more into the zone with being a parent and going along this new journey. Joni, thank you so much for coming to the show. I don't know how many people have listened to my Taming the Monster talk, but one of the things that was a critical thing for me is I woke up one night after the baby had been crying and crying and crying, and I had this visualization that I could just hold the baby under the water, she would stop crying, and I could go back to sleep. And in my brain at that time, it seemed like a logical reason. There's a problem, there's a solution. And another part of me, which wasn't really emotional, just said, is this normal? And that's when I started finding out more about the condition that I had, what I needed to do. But what does sleep really mean to the brain and our behavior?
Sleep is not a negotiable. It is absolutely essential for your brain and coping and hence your behavior. So, this whole ecosystem has got a circadian rhythm, and actually what the body's designed to have is have 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep. So when you have a baby and that's disrupted, it will definitely affect your emotional regulation and your behavior.
Which part of the brain affects the emotional regulation?
We've got two little almond-shaped, tiny little things in our brain called amygdala. And that's your fight or flight, your rest or digest. So those get affected the most. But the hippocampus, I've got my little second brain here.
Yes.
The hippocampus, which stores memories, that gets affected. So most of our brain, in fact about 80%, are all those limbic systems. The prefrontal cortex, this executive function of your brain, is a tiny part. So most of your brain are those emotive centers.
And what I find very challenging when you've got this lack of sleep and you've got all of these bizarre thoughts, there's a very high level of shame that comes into it. And when that happens, when you have shame, it's almost you are too ashamed to reach out and ask for help in case someone's going to judge you. Are they going to take my baby away? Am I going to be labeled as a bad mother? We believe that these things should be natural, that, you get the Living and Loving magazine, you see the mom over there and she looks very happy. Yeah, absolutely. And then when your experience doesn't match that, then you really start packing on things. And when you go out and you see people, and people ask you how you're doing, you're like, I'm fine, but inside you're not fine. So you've said 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep, but babies don't work like that.
They happen, yeah. So the antidote to shame is what? Empathy. So we need self-compassion during this time when you have a baby that is waking up. My second child, Kim, woke me up 8 times a night. And she's now 25 years old, but I have never forgotten those 8 times a night. My first baby, not. But a fun fact now is that when I need her to design something for me, because she's a brilliant designer, I go, Britt, this is payback time. Design it today. Remember, you woke me up 8 times a night. But going back to this time of having a baby, getting home, and your earlier point was such a good point, is that you're just not prepared. I remember saying to my mum, like, why didn't you warn me that I wouldn't have the sleep and I'd be so ratty? Like, I just don't feel prepared for all of this. And she said, I did tell you that, but it doesn't sink in until you actually struggling through those first few weeks and adjusting to motherhood. It's really a very dark and horrible time. I remember that. So you can't get those 7 hours of sleep. So what do? You've got to have some other plan B strategies. And that is that when your baby sleeps during the day, you too need to power nap. So what I taught myself to do is a 20-minute power nap, and that was non-negotiable. Very easy to teach yourself. put baby down and you go, right, I don't care. I don't need to shop. I don't need to clean. I don't need to return phone calls. I am prioritizing, so that self-compassion, that empathy for yourself, my 20-minute power nap or my 90-minute power nap. Those are, Kim, the only 2 time periods you need to power nap. So how do we do it? You put a glass of water on the other side of the room and you get into that kind of fetal position, all warm and cozy. You do some deep breathing, which relaxes the brain and gets your brain into a parasympathetic system. So I do the 4-7-8, breathe in for 4 counts, hold your breath for 7 counts, and then release through the mouth for 8 counts. And I just do a few of those, and I give myself permission not to get into a deep sleep. Because sometimes you kind of, you're too wired to sleep. But I put a mask on. Here, I brought my little mask. I put a mask on, so if it's the middle of the day, I've, blocked out any sunlight, and I will set that alarm for 20 minutes. If I've only got that 20 minutes, I will get up, have my sip of water, and carry on with what I need to do. Alternatively, I set the alarm for 90 minutes. So having those power naps during the day helps you cope with a broken sleep at night. So that's one strategy.
I like that. So power naps worked a lot for me, but I also find one of the challenges, and I like what she said about giving yourself permission not to have a deep sleep.
Yes.
Because sometimes you speak to moms and they say, but then the baby just falls asleep, I've just fallen asleep and then the baby wakes up.
Yeah.
And so because we are not reaching that goal, we think that it's a problem. For me, it was like, if I'm not going to sleep, then I'll just lie here.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
100%.
okay.
100%. Because the minute you get into performance anxiety mode, what happens to your brain? Adrenaline, cortisol, noradrenaline, you're not going to fall asleep. So if you are saying, I've only got 20 minutes, and you get into an anxious state, you will not fall asleep. So that permission to not get into a deep sleep is just fine. Blocking out the world, there's something quite sensory, and that's why these that are designed by the Ria Booker Foundation have got this beautiful, soft black velvet, because there's also a sense of coming back to self. Because being a mum is giving all the time. It's relentless giving. So having that, whether it's, sometimes I could only do a 10-minute power nap because the baby was crying again. I would do that. Sometimes I would say, right, I don't want to have a deep power nap. I need some vitamin D, and I'll just go and lie on the grass and do a 5-minute yoga nidra, and just listen to that audio tape and really start relaxing from my toes up and get someone else to help me into relaxation mode. So, you kind of chop and change and find out what you can do that suits you at that particular time.
Now, when you spoke about, the whole performance anxiety thing, that leads me to the next question. We've got a lot of women who are high performance women, and generally high performance women struggle to say, I'm not coping. And so they will say, like, how do I go back to work? How do I lead a team? How do I get into this whole thing when I am so sleep deprived? And I kind of feel that your book, I Can versus I Can't, that actually has got some of the strategies that leaders will need. Even though your book is not written for parents, it can also help parents to find some strategies. So how do you manage that? You've got back to work and you are sleep deprived and you now got to work with a team.
Is that I will sometimes name it to tame it. I will say to my team, I have had a dreadful night. So my attention span is limited. I need to stand up and draw on the flip chart as opposed to listen to you, because my brain's just going to go out the window. And I'm going to make this meeting shorter, snappier, more action orientated, and delegate to you guys. And guess what? I'm leaving at 4 o'clock, and before I go home to be a parent, I'm going for an hour's massage. And I'm going to go into a deep sleep in that hour's massage. So again, that's self-compassion.
Yes.
And actually saying I'm feeling, I sat in meetings, Kim, I can remember crying, saying I shouldn't be crying, and there's nothing really to cry about. I just feel so low emotionally because I haven't had sufficient sleep, and I just feel overwhelmed by trying to get this project over the line. So name it to tame it, because people will step in and help you.
Exactly.
One of my great mates, when I was had my 2 girls, and I was battling to, and especially being a single mum at some stage, is she said, just remember, that people are brought up, children are brought brought up by communities.
Yes.
So lean into your community. But you're right, it's hard to ask for help, and you've got to teach yourself to ask for help.
And in a way, I think it makes you a better leader, because when you are vulnerable, you give other people permission to be vulnerable as well.
100%. Yeah, and to be real about this stuff. And, you know, I started work in the 80s, and I can remember having to be quite stoic about stuff and not being vulnerable. And now I'm really pleased that a lot of the teams I work with, the whole person comes to work. And I work in many different teams in different forms. And I love the fact that people go like, actually, I'm taking a hybrid day today, or I'm whatever, because I find I'm not coping. So that vulnerability and that honesty, and it ebbs and flows. You know, people just step in, and we've got to learn to dance with each other in a team if you want to be cohesive and collaborate well.
Besides the brain, you've got a rather weird looking contraption that looks a little bit like the fly. Please tell us what that is.
Well, indeed. This is a 2 tea strainers. And this is kind of a mnemonic for saying, as a mum and being sleep deprived, is that sometimes you've just got to withdraw. So, I mean, it does look a bit weird, I know. There you go. Is withdraw into your head, Kim, and just go like, how am I doing? Remember, this muscle here is all about survival. So that it's negative. So we go like, I'm not doing well, I'm not coping well with my team, I'm not leading well, I haven't made that decision, I haven't responded, I'm not a good mum because I actually haven't been here for 12 hours, and now I'm trying to pack parenting into an hour. And we withdraw into our heads, which is this negatively framed hardwiring, and we lambaste ourselves. So I'm encouraging young mums to withdraw into their heads and actually saying, what is going well? Do you know the stats are that, flipping that, is that parents give 18 negative comments, the ratio, to 1 positive comment to their children. But we do that to ourselves as well. So withdraw into your head and start to look at what are the good things that are happening. So even if you had to, I had a woman the other day. She's working for one of the big banks. She's doing her MBA at Gibbs, and she's got 2 young children, and she's my coachee. And she said, Joni, I'm trying to get my thesis over the line. I'm not doing anything well, and I'm not spending any time with my children. I said, the non-negotiable is their dinner time. So you and your husband eat later, but stand around that dinner table with them, and it can be 20 minutes. What was a good thing today? What happened differently? Play kind of a fun card game I gave her, etc. Do some funny tricks for them, make them laugh. And that 20 minutes is golden. Then she's got a helper that puts her children to bed, her husband makes supper, she eats at her desk. So I said, you know what, he will understand more this year, but that 20 minutes, and then remind your children of that the next morning when you're taking them to school. Wasn't it funny when blah, 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 blah happened? So, you know, those microwaved activities which are important. And then the other pair of glasses here are, please, mums and dads actually, do not be watching TV to simmer down at the end of the day. All of that blue light into your eyes will affect your brain. It affects the production of melatonin for good quality sleep. So sleep, remember, Kim, has got 2 dimensions to it. It's the time, but actually that's not as important as deep restorative stage 4 sleep. So if you think I'm going to be self-compassionate now about, you know, binging on Netflix, you're doing your sleep a big, you know, disfavor. So yes, if you have to work online, then wear some blue blockers, which look a bit like this. You can get those anywhere. But I would strongly suggest that you minimize any TV time as a young parent, or parent of young children. You may not be young. And rather, when you've put them to bed, you get into bed with a lovely novel and actually ease out the day with paper in your hands, as opposed to watching anything on your phone, laptop, or TV.
I like the paper in the hands things because I'm a book person. So just to let people know that for the Taming the Monster, Joni was the person who gave me all of the little sleep goodies for the book. Thank you very much for that. Because we want to have sane parents. And the thing is that it's also not just ladies. Men also struggle with sleep. I remember a funny story when my middle child was born. The church came and brought some lovely food for us that I didn't have to cook, and my husband's job was to dish up the food. We got into routine of when it was time to breastfeed the baby, and it had been a long day for me because I was an entrepreneur and a mom. The milk wouldn't come, so we developed this routine that he would bring me some water, he would bring me supper, then he would take the baby away and he would allow me to just lie down for 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, the milk would come in because now I was hydrated, I had the nutrition, I had all of those kinds of things. So it was heavy on him because we would express milk and then he would alternate with feed. So I'd do one feed myself and then he would use the bottle for that. So it was getting up at night and working, and this one evening I'm like, where's the food? This man is not coming through. So I come through and he's in the kitchen and there are the plates and there's the food that the church brought, and his head was against the cupboard and he had fallen asleep standing. So I think that sometimes we don't prepare the whole family for having a baby, and understanding that men are going to feel that way. And interestingly, their testosterone drops. It starts dropping before the baby is born. So now there's like this weird dynamic going on. They don't feel quite themselves. They don't feel as masculine. And they can also not have intimacy with their partner. And so that throws them off a little bit, and they also get a bit ratty. And so we're like expecting them to be strong, but we're not realizing that
the big effects on them.
Exactly.
You just brought up a memory, just a quick one. My first daughter, my late husband used to bring me a flask of, beautiful ginger tea or whatever, and then a big thing of lovely rusks, which is just packed with gluten and sugar and not good for us. And I remember all my mates had babies at the same time. After they had their baby, they, lost their weight easily. I put on weight after I had my baby. So I was like, this is terrible. This must be these rusks. So I said to my husband, no more rusks. He said, yes, I agree, no more rusks, because you eat a packet a night. Who does that? So it's also important what we eat in terms of our sleep. And that was affecting my sleep because all of that carbohydrate and sugar, I was not sinking into a deep sleep. It was affecting this ecosystem. So what you eat in the middle of the night when you're breastfeeding?
Yes. Joni, you've really given us some great tips. Thank you very much. So everyone stay tuned for our next show, where we're going to be learning some more bits and pieces about how to get into that place of calm and coping when you've had a baby. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Pleasure.